rights.
Oh, yeah.
So. Yeah. Okay, so hi, my name is Sidney Cohen. I'm from Temple Bethany in Rockville, Maryland.
My name is Oshinsky. I'm also from Temple Bethany.
My name is Luke Rubin. I'm from Temple Shalom in Chevy Chase, Maryland.
My name is Viva Bederson. I'm from Temple Shalom in Chevy Chase, Maryland.
My name is Ella Barton Beagleson, and I'm from Temple Shalom in Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. We are in Washington with other teams as part of the Reformed Jewish Movement and as part of the Religious Action Center, a legislative office of the Union for Reformed Judaism, with millions of Jews and thousands of rabbis. We are here today to talk to you about the right to choose and reproductive rights, specifically a woman's right to have an abortion.
Since the Supreme Court's decision in Roe v. Wade in 1973, Americans have had a constitutional right to have an abortion. That being said, there are still many women in the U.S. who don't have access to a safe abortion.
Whether it's state-mandated counseling, waiting periods, parental involvement, gestational limits, or targeted regulations of abortion providers, there's an increasing number of regulations restricting Roe v. Wade. One of the oldest abortion restrictions is the Hyde Amendment. First passed by Congress in 1976, the Hyde Amendment prohibits federal health insurance coverage of abortion services.
This has mostly affected low-income individuals who rely on programs like Medicaid for health insurance. This also impacts Americans in the military, Peace Corps volunteers, and federal employees. Bans such as the Hyde Amendment fall hardest on individuals struggling to make ends meet and who face other systemic barriers to obtaining healthcare information and services.
The right to choose is a decision all women should be able to make regardless of their income level and geography.
Repealing the Hyde Amendment would help ensure this fundamental right for all American women and protect their privacy granted by the 14th Amendment.
Rashi, an 11th century sage, holds that the pregnant person has more status than a fetus up until birth. As he explains it, for as long as it did not come out into the world, it is not called a living thing, and it is permissible to take its life in order to save its mother. Rashi's belief is important because in Judaism, we believe the fetus isn't a person, since it's confined in a mother's abdomen, and only when it is open to the world, it can be called a living thing. If the fetus possesses threat to the mother and her health, then it will prioritize the mother since she holds a higher status as the living thing.
Reproductive rights is the most personal issue for me as a female. Ever since I had understood the concept of birth control, abortion included, I hadn't thought twice about it because I truly believed that people should have a choice. When I was around the age to start to understand the concept of birth control more deeply, my cousin was at the age when she was starting to experiment with sex. She was in a relationship with her boyfriend and they had just had sex and had taken all the right precautions. She then took a pregnancy test the next day and it was positive. She lives in a state where parental consent is required in order to have an abortion. This would mean talking to her parents about her sexual history, not something she was comfortable sharing in the middle of her parents' divorce. My cousin confided in me and my older sister. Through some questionable online teenage research, my sister read that parsley could be a DIY plan B. A week later, I remember being in the car for a family vacation with my cousin and sister in the back. I noticed my sister took out a bag of parsley and handed it to my cousin. My cousin left the car and got into her mom's car. It was weird, not real science, and I felt like, why do we have to resort to such unknown, not fact-based, pseudoscience measures? It was something we wanted to believe because it seemed like her only choice. People may say that even though it was hard, she should have just talked to her parents. And they would be right. It was hard. It seemed like such an impossible task to even fathom. All I remember is being in that car with my sister and my cousin, seeing the desperation in my cousin's eyes and seeing the concern and just fear in my sister's. Fortunately, it was just a pregnancy scare resulting from a faulty pregnancy test, but it really put everything into perspective for me, not just in that moment, but even to this day. I will never forget the desperation that my cousin unjustly faced, and I hope you won't either. Thank you.
We would like to ask you to pass on our thanks to Senator Cardin for the co-sponsoring of the Each Woman Act, which would eliminate the Hyde Amendment and guarantee that every person who receives care or insurance through a federal plan or program will have coverage for an abortion. We also would like to ask you to pass on our encouragement of his continued support of the Act, as it is imperative to the fight for reproductive rights throughout the U.S.
Thank you.